Hello and welcome to another video. This is Cracking the Cryptic Fog of War Pack, puzzle number 7, Nazca. The rules are: Fog of War. Correctly placed digits clear the fog around them. Classic. Every row, column, and box must have all numbers from 1 to 9 exactly once. Arrow. The numbers along the shaft of each arrow must sum to the number at the base. Partial Kropki. A white dot between two cells indicates that the neighboring digits are consecutive. A black dot between two cells indicates that one of the digits is twice as big as the other one. Not all possible dots are given. German Whispers. Adjacent digits along a green line must differ by at least 5. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. We see that we have a double Kropki pair over here. And we know that 5, 7, and 9 cannot be within these cells. That is because nothing doubles into these cells, and the double of their value is over 9. So therefore, this can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, or an 8. Now, if you look more closely, you'll see that all 3 of these digits are on a shaft of an arrow. And the numbers on a shaft of an arrow must sum into the number at the base of an arrow. So if this was an 8 anywhere here, that means that you would have an 8-4 pair giving you 12, which is way over the maximum value, which is a 9 that you could fit at the base of an arrow. So an 8 cannot be anywhere here. And for the same reason, you cannot have a 6, because 6 would give you a 6-3 pair, which is already 9, and you have 3 digits. So that would give you a value over 10. So you cannot have a 6 or a 3 here either. Okay, so we see that the arrow goes like this. We don't know where it actually leads to or how long it is. But we do know that this line over here, the German Whisper line, makes it so that this value is 5 digits away from these two values. So these two, whatever they are, cannot be smaller than 5. So they have to be 6, 7, 8, or 9. And now let's go through these values individually and see if we can make this work. So first of all, let's just assume that this value over here is not the base of the arrow, but a part of the shaft. So if it's a part of the shaft, and if it's a 6, well, is there any way that you could have a value here low enough that you could theoretically make the arrow work? No, because the lowest value here is actually just a 2 over here, and then 1 on both sides, making that a 4, and 6 is 10. So nowhere here could you have a base of an arrow with a digit 10. So yeah, basically that means that this value, whatever it is, it has to be in fact the base of the arrow. And let's first assume that it is a 6. So let's assume that a 4 is here. If that is a 4, that means that on both sides you must have the 2, and that's an 8. That's higher than 6. That doesn't work. So a 4 couldn't be here. What about a 2? Let's assume that this value is a 2. Well, then you can have either a 4 or a 1 on the sides. Let's assume that one side is a 4 at least. Then that is already 6. And you still need to account for a value here. So that value, the total of these 3, has to be over 6 if there is a 4 on the side. So that doesn't work. Let's assume that it is a 1. 2 and 1 gives you 3. So this is either another 1 giving you a 4, or it is a 4 giving you a 7. So that means that doesn't work. So this value cannot be a 2. The only possible value it could have is a 1. But a 1 gives you a 2 on both sides. And the maximum value of that is 5. And the only value actually is 5. So 5 isn't equal to 6. So nope, we cannot make the assumption that this is 6 work. So this is not a 6. Let's instead assume that this value is, in fact, a 9. Now, we saw that when a value is 1 over here, that means that you must have 2 and 2 on both sides, making the only value here a 5, which is not the 9, so the 1 doesn't work. So this isn't a 1. Let's assume that it is in fact a 2. Then the max value you could have is having a 4 on both sides, but then that would sum up to 10. Sorry. So that doesn't work. But if there is only one 4 on the side, and then there is a 1 on the other side, like this, well, that would be 4 into 6, and 1 is 7. That would still not be a 9, so there is no way to make a 2 work here. So the only thing left is a 4. But then the only value here is having 2 on both sides, which is an 8. So again, it's not a 9. That doesn't work. So a 9 cannot be here either. What about an 8? Well, since an 8 is on a German whisper line, it must be at least 5 digits away from the value here. So this cannot be a 4. So it can only be a 1 or a 2. And if it's a 1, we saw that the maximum value that this can sum up to is 5. So let's assume that it's a 2 instead, because it can't be a 1. So again, this can only be, let's assume that this is a 4 for starters, that one of the values is a 4. Then 4 and 2 is 6. And what about here? If this is a 4, that's 10. It's way too high. And if that's a 1, that's a 7. So that doesn't work. So, and if this is a 1, we said that the only possible value is a 5. So yeah, that's still not an 8. So this value cannot be an 8 either. It must be a 7. That's the only other option. And before we fill the 7 in, let's just fill in everything else. And that's going to make it a bit easier for us. 7, 8, 9. Okay, so this is a 7. And since we know that there is only... So if a 4 was here, that would mean that both of these are 2s, and the maximum and the value would be an 8. So a 4 is not here. So a 4 must be on one of the sides. So since a 4 is on one of the sides, that means a 2 must be here. All right? And now so much stuff opened up. We have to be a bit careful. So since this is summing up to a 7, these cannot be 7, 9, or an 8. And same is true over here. This cannot be a 9, or an 8, or a 7. And now, since these must be 5 digits apart, this must be a low value. So this cannot be 9, 8, 7, 6, or a 5. In fact, cannot be a 4 or a 3 either. So that's a 1-2 pair. And now, look at this. This is also an arrow. We don't know how long the arrow is, or if it curls upwards or downwards, but what we do know is that it cannot contain a 9 or an 8, right? And if it did contain a 6, the next possible value here, the smallest value would be a 3. So it would sum up to 9, which is more than 7, so it cannot have a 6. For the same reason, it cannot have a 5, so it is in fact just 2 lines long, two cells long, and that gives us a 3-4 pair in this box. Okay. Since we don't have a 2 over here, this can be a 5. And okay, so let's do the same here. So this value cannot be a low value, it has to be a high value. 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, and we can see that there is an arrow here, right? We don't know if it's just a free long arrow, maybe it is longer, but we do know that this value over here cannot be a 9. And In fact, what is this arrow like? So since it has a really high value, it has a 7, and we don't have a 2, that means that it's either an 8 or a 9, either here or here, right? We don't know for sure that it's just 3 lines long, because for example, there could be a 9 here, and then it could be 7, 1, 1, right? So we don't actually know if it's just 3 cells long. It could be longer, but we do know for sure that it uses a 1, the number 1, because if it didn't use a number 1 on this line, over here or over here, the lowest possible value it could have is a 3. And 7 plus 3 would be 10, so that would be too high. So it must contain a 1, either here or here. So that means that anywhere here it doesn't contain a 1. And look at this, the lowest value here is a 3 now. And a 7 isn't 5 digits away from the 3, so that means that this has to be an 8. And so this value has to be a 3 because a 4 is again too high. So since it is indeed 3 digits long, this has to be a 9, and then this is a 1. Okay, so far so good. This cannot be a 9 or an 8 because we don't have a 1. And then, oh, okay, so this is the base of an arrow, so this is a 1-2 pair up here. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have a pair. It's a 1-2 pair. Okay, pretty good. And that's a 4. 4 and 2 is 6, so that makes this a 1. So the 1 is here, the 2 is here. So this value must be, so cannot be a 5 and it cannot be a 6. And now, so this cannot be a 6 either, because there is no 1 anymore that we could use to make this work. And it cannot be a 5 because there's no 2, so that's a 3-4 pair. So 3 and 4. And we see that there is a 3-4 pair up here as well, so up here you cannot have a 3 or a 4. Since the lowest value here is a 5, this cannot be a 6, a 7, or a 5, so that's a 3, making this either an 8 or a 9. All right. What next? So it will be logical to just clean up the German whispers. 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, the lowest value here is an 8. And over here as well. So this has to be a low value now. It has to be like that. So this cannot be a 9 or an 8 because there's no 1, or a 2 because there's no 7. And now that has to be a 3. This has to be a 6. Okay, so this is the 9. And that's a 5. 2. And then over here we have a 1-7 pair. Oops. So this cannot be a 1 or a 7. So that's the 8. And now we see that 8 is up here somewhere. So it cannot be up here. And that makes the 8 here. Then that's a 9. Since that's the 8, this cannot be a 5 or a 4. That's a 2. Making that 2, 1. And then what do we have? So this cannot be a 9, obviously. Let's check the 9s. So nothing too obvious. Oh, over here. Yeah, so this is a 9. This is a 9. That's a free. It's a 4. It's a free. And okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, okay, this is a 6 with the 9. And this cannot be a 5. All right, because of the 1. And they have to be 5 apart. This cannot be a 9, it's on a shaft. So it has to be over here. So that's the 9, which gives us a 6, 7 pair up here. And then that's a 2. So this cannot be 9 or a 5. Can this be a 1? Nope. Because it's a base of an arrow. So the only place for the 1 in this box is here. And therefore, can this be a 5? No, because this would be a 9. And then there is no way to get a 9. So this has to be a 7, 2. So this is a 5. 9, 3. There we go. This cannot be a 7. And then this is a 9. So this cannot be an 8. There's no 1. Or a 7, because there's no 2. So this is a 5, 9. So this cannot be an 8, because a 9 is over here. So we see that the arrow goes like somewhere like here. And an 8 can only be paired with a 1 to yield a 9. And a 9 isn't there. A 9 couldn't be at the shaft, so at the bottom of the arrow, I mean. So the 9s are all set. An 8 is here or here, so it cannot be here, meaning that the only place left is up here. And then let's see, the 7. All right, 6. Okay, 5. So 5 is either here or here, meaning that it's not here. And then 5 is up here. So a 4 can be here, making that a 6 free. 7, 4, 6. And the puzzle seems pretty complete now. The only things left are gonna be to just fill in all the values. So that's a 3, making that a 1 and 2. Oops, a 1 and 2 I said. That's a 4. So again, this cannot be a 7, because that will make this a 2, and then the base would have to be a 9. It cannot be a 7. And for the same reason, this cannot be a 7 either. And also 5, 7 is up here, so no 7 here. So that's an 8, 2. This cannot be a 7 possibly, so it has to be a 6. because that's how you make the 6 with the 4. 7 1 1 7 7 2 5 up here 4 5 8 4 7, and with this the puzzle is complete. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed the video and see you in the next one.